The Renaissance was a movement of cultural rebirth that emerged from Italy and spread to the rest of the European civilization from the 14th century to the mid-17th century. It was a time for the revival of classical scholarship in the form of artistic expression and intellectual exploration. Within this period of artistic reformation, two scholars, William Shakespeare and Francesco Petrarch, left a profound influence on Renaissance poetry. Today, in the 21st century, you and I have the privilege of witnessing the unfurling of a new renaissance, a re-renaissance, if you will, of contemporary literary expression. At the forefront of this renaissance, there exists yet another duo whose poetic prowess transcends our collective literacy. Today we pay homage to the luminous souls of Rupi Kaur and Andrew Titty. Rupi Kaur is an Instagram literary phenomenon who skillfully rips off 2012 Twitter in her poetry collections such as Milk and Honey. She writes and perhaps thinks exclusively in a lowercase serif font and accompanies her creations with minimalist illustrations to weave together the threads of love, heartbreak, healing, and feminine empowerment. Kaur's raw and emotive poetry inspired thousands of internet users that are less poetically gifted, including me, to imitate her poetic style out of pure admiration and perhaps even a degree of jealousy. Andrew Tate, who is not only a steroid abuser but also a linguistic warrior who has self-admittedly lived 5,000 human years atop Wudan Mountain, has graced us with perhaps the
finest literary works in the history of the English language.
Tate's verses, more commonly known as tweets, resound with the rhythm of combat to awaken dormant misogyny in his readers. His war room, better known as Twitter, is filled with relentless attacks of male complacency, brutal denouncements of woke culture, and pathetic attempts at denying his sex trafficking charges. Unlike Kaur, whose body of readers mainly consists of white teenage girls, Tate's poetry resonates with an army of teenage boys who surrender their ears to the symphony of his thinly veiled daddy issues, alpha male lifestyle. Indeed, when he declares, "I am a poet," it is a tremendous understatement. He is not merely a poet, he is the Renaissance. Well, half of it, the other half is Rupi Kaur. In their union, the literary powerhouses that are Kaur and Tate herald a resplendent dawn. Together, they stand as the masculine and feminine twin pillars of the modern Renaissance. Through seemingly polar opposite perspectives, their verses, often accompanied by outstanding visual art, seem to explore surprisingly similar themes, namely those of love, pain, mortality, daddy issues, and a common desire to prove that they're not like the other girls or boys. I'm sure one question lingers on all of our minds. Why did I make this video? Who's the better poet? To answer this question, this struggling CS student who hasn't read a single book in about 2 years will attempt to examine the similarities between their poetry using her high school English literature knowledge. To be fair, this poetry battle is very much skewed towards Rupi Kaur because the Andrew Tate poems that I chose are actually just his tweets that he formats poetically but rarely explicitly defines as poetry. But since Rupi Kaur's definition of poetry also happens to be normal sentences that she presses enter between, I shall align my poetic selection to her definition of poetry. And I'm doing that because Andrew Tate did have actual poetry on his unfortunately deleted Instagram account, and from the remnants of his poetry,
I show less than I love, but I miss her. Thinking back to the last day I kissed her. She left a sore on my heart. There's a blister, but I fucked the next best thing. That's her sister.
It is clear that when he tries, his poetic opus demonstrates a linguistic mastery beyond my literary comprehension, so in order to avoid making a fool of myself and to avoid having a stroke, I'll just use his tweets. Disclaimer, I do not recommend that you explore this body of literature ever. The first theme that their poetry explores is relationships, mainly heteronormative romantic relationships.
You must have known you were wrong when your fingers were dipped inside me, searching for honey that would not come for you.
These two write a lot about relationships, and many poets do, but what's interesting is that the both of them are especially passionate about exploring this very specific category of relationship things that I call
disgusting overconfidence in one's sex appeal.
Yeah.
My mic cut out for this part and I'm too lazy to re-record.
Yeah. Let's read Rupi's poem. The woman who comes after me will be a bootleg version of who I am. She will try and write poems for you to erase the ones I've left memorized on your lips, but her lines could never punch you in the stomach the way mine did. She will then try to make love to your body, but she will never lick, caress, or suck like me. She will be a sad replacement of the woman you let slip. Nothing she does will excite you. Okay, repeat after me. Run-on sentences are only subversive and cool when the content of your poem is subversive and cool. Otherwise, it's just the run-on sentence.
Run-on sentences are only subversive and cool when the content of your poem is subversive and cool. Otherwise, it's just a run-on sentence.
You can tell she tried to do something there with a lick, caress, and suck, like she's pausing for applause for speaking openly and graphically about sex because she thinks that's a reclamation of female sexuality. This poem kind of equates male attention to female worth, which rubs me the wrong way. But anyway, we're just here to make jokes, so let's lighten up the mood with Tate's tweet. Imagine being 24 and gorgeous and sweet and nice, and finally getting a date with a top G, and he finds out you went to a festival when you were 19 and you get left on red and never recover, and argue with your new man for the rest of your life because they're just not me. So both poets seem to have a fetish for run-on sentences. There are many things to point out here. The use of the all caps very effectively captures the emotional meltdown over a hypothetical scenario. It might just be an intertextual reference to Donald Trump's famous mental breakdown tweets that are also written in all caps. And the abrupt switch between referring to himself in third person to referring to himself in first person further contributes to the hysterical state of panic that he expresses. He first uses the pronoun he to refer to himself, and then the last sentence says, because they're just not me, like he forgot that he was talking about himself in third person. Remember this tweet that we all just interpreted as him making fun of pronouns? What if he wasn't kidding? What if he just doesn't know how pronouns are used, and that's why he struggles to understand the difference between points of views? The whole thing just comes across as a cry for help, so somebody help him, please. It's interesting, though, how Rupi's poems are somehow significantly more misogynistic than Andrew Tate's tweet. At least he says she's gorgeous and 24 and sweet and nice, and the woman in his tweets actually has an identity beyond her gender, whereas in Rupi's poems, the woman is just reduced to her gender. The woman who comes after me will be a bootleg version of who I am. You don't even know her. She doesn't even exist. She's a figment of your imagination, and the only thing that you actually know about her is that she's probably a woman. Preach feminism until a hypothetical woman hypothetically dates your ex, am I right? Andrew's tweet is just so stupid. Okay, a little less pretentious. And they're both hypocrites. Andrew's petty emotional meltdown tweets contradicts with his I don't give a fuck about women persona that he tries to perpetuate in his wider body of work that we'll talk about later. And Rupi Kaur is just not being as feminist as she says she is. So I guess for this one, it's a draw. And now we'll explore, again, a very specific genre of literature that I will call narcissistic heroism.
I want to know what happened to all our action heroes. Remember in the 80s, you had all these big, strong men, and nobody told them what to do, and no girl ever beat them up. And they were big, and they were muscly, and they were brave. Look at the dork, the last guy who played Spider-Man. He looks like a geek.
Now you're probably asking, isn't narcissistic heroism everything that's ever come out of Andrew Tate's mouth? And to that I say yes, but these ones in particular are especially bad. But first we'll look at Rupi's poem. When they buried me alive, I dug my way out of the ground with palm and fist. I howled so loud, the earth rose in fear, and the dirt began to levitate. My whole life has been an uprising, one burial after another. I will find my way out of you just fine. Oh wait, this is about a breakup? Boo! I thought this was about that time you were buried alive and climbed out by yourself. This is so much lamer now. My first impression was that this is a ridiculously and narcissistically dramatic poem, but it's clear that with the phrase buried me alive, Rupi Kaur is talking about everyone who's ever wronged her, and since I don't know what she's been through, I can't really say that being buried alive is a dramatic analogy for the malice that she's faced, but I howled so loud, the earth rose in fear, and the dirt began to levitate. I understand that these are hyperboles, but I can't for the life of me imagine what she could possibly be referring to. You know we live on the same planet as you, right? And we know that all you do is post shitty poems on Instagram? What the hell are the uprisings? But, you know, poetry is personal, so I don't really know what I'm talking about. Besides, Tate's poem is so much worse. Let's just see for ourselves. Okay, this is his internet famous poem that he posted from jail for some reason. I saw my reflection today and I barely recognized myself. A long beard, a full head of hair, and the stresses of battle show on my face. But then I looked into my eyes and recognized myself completely. They cannot break me. A full head of hair? Are you sure? Do you think we're fucking blind? The stresses of battle from sitting in a courtroom for your sex trafficking charges? Oh, I thought that the women that you imprisoned and trafficked for sex were the ones who bore the stresses of battle, but no, it's you, of course. What are these horrible things that Tate is proclaiming that they are trying to do to him? They cannot break me. Break you? Did you mean hold you legally accountable for your felonies? They absolutely can. Or did you mean they, as in the people on Reddit, and break you as in make fun of your bald little fucking head? Because again, we absolutely can. Now, hopefully, you'll understand why I call this category of poetry narcissistic heroism. Although these two poems are clearly written under different circumstances, they have a lot in common. Both authors establish a dichotomy of me versus them, and an extremely antagonistic relationship between me and this unspecified them. Oh, they are trying to kill me, but I survive, is essentially the sentiment that both of these poems are trying to express. I wonder if this dramatic they're trying to kill me sentiment that they share comes from the fact that they're both controversial characters on the internet. Anyway, the drama is another thing that these poems have in common. The heroic portrayals of themselves. Rupi using elements in nature to make herself sound like some wild mythical animal, and Andrew Tate portrays himself as this tragic warrior martyr. As an extension to their dramatic heroism. They both hypothesize about their own demises in the most pretentious fucking way possible. Rupi says, "I have survived far too much to go quietly. Let a meteor take me. Nope. Call the thunder for backup. Will not do that. My death will be grand. The land will crack. The sun will eat itself. No, it will not. The day I leave." Now, time for Tate's poem. I prepare myself to absorb the brutal kinetics of piercing lead, as all other silencing attempts fail, and stage 3 of what? Approaches. I anticipate a bullet will be the chosen utensil of pacification. Utensil of pacification, everybody. These words have never been said before in this order. This guy is Shakespeare. I can only pray and prepare. I will force myself to breathe the best I can. I promise. Oh, honey, you don't have to. Promise. I don't really care. So, Tate's poem is surprisingly much more mellow than Rupi's poem, but not that surprising when you realize that the purpose of this poem is to gain pity from his followers. And he's saying that this unspecified they are going to kill him as an attempt to silence him, because all other silencing attempts fail. Well, that seems like a bit too much, don't you think? If we want him to shut the fuck up, which we do, we can just delete his Twitter account. Elon? Oh, you're busy doing that. Okay. They both shamelessly romanticize themselves, especially Andrew Tate. Fuck that guy. Rupi wins this round. Oh wait, no, this part isn't over yet. As another part of this narcissistic heroism, they not only see themselves as being cooler than they actually are, but also as more important than they actually are. Let's see this pair of poems. Rupi says, I stand on the sacrifices of 1,000,000 women before me, thinking, what can I do to make this mountain taller so the women after me, the woman who comes after me will be a boot-like version of who I can see farther. Legacy. It's time for Andrew Tate. I write my tweets for men who were like me when I was younger, hardworking, smart men who cannot sleep because they have not conquered every dream and aspiration they've ever had. Or because they're overdosing on steroids. Men who will force the universe into compliance. As you can see, the authors share this sentiment that they are the great leaders of their movements, that are female empowerment and male empowerment, respectively. They think their writing is leading a new generation of people of their gender, when in reality they just appeal to teenagers that will soon grow out of whatever phase they're in right now when they read actual poetry or realize that girls are not that scary.
Women don't drink water, ever.
Unfortunately, it seems that Rupi and Andrew are well beyond their teenage years, and I don't think they're gonna grow out of it, guys. So, I guess we just have to accept that and move on as a society. Unless we just happen to be watching a really funny and well-edited YouTube video that's making fun of the both of them, in which case, maybe we should wait till we finish watching the video before we move on. Yeah, we should totally do that. Their poetry also explore the theme of gender norms, more specifically, beauty standards for women. Surprisingly, these two seem to be able to reach some sort of an agreement on this topic. Okay, let's read Rupi's poem. I want to apologize to all the women I have called beautiful before I've called them intelligent or brave. I am sorry I made it sound as though something as simple as what you're born with is all you have to be proud of. But intelligence is something that you're born with. In fact, it's much easier to modify your appearance than it is to modify the neurological properties of your brain. When you have broken mountains with your wit, from now on I will say things like, you are resilient, or you are extraordinary. Not because I don't think you're beautiful, but because I need you to know you are more than that. So let's see what Andrew Tate has to say about this. I don't care how beautiful she is. Can be a 25 out of 10. I don't care how perfect her picture is. I don't even slow down as I scroll. In fact, seeing any of these females repulses me. Truly immune to thirst traps. It's all a psyop, a mind attack. I couldn't give less of a fuck. Both writers seem to reject the idea that women's only value is their physical beauty, but they reject the idea from different perspectives. On the feminist front, Rupi Kaur rejects the objectification of women. Andrew Tate, on the other hand, objectifies women and conspires about us, claiming that we are a mind attack. Now, because I'm not fucking deranged, I don't know what he's trying to express when he draws equivalents between women and mind attacks. In fact, I'm not really sure what mind attacks are supposed to be, but I do think the confuddling linguistic properties of phrases like psyop and mind attack provide the poem with that touch of ambiguity that is core to art. Rupi's poem this time doesn't really have any standouts for me. I mean, I get the point that she's trying to make, but it's a cliche, surface-level take, and the writing is mediocre as usual. And worst of all, there aren't any made-up words in there. So in conclusion, the sentiment of women are more than our physical appearances, which Rupi Kaur explores, is kind of cliche, but Andrew Tate does something new. He manages to reject beauty standards and objectify women at the same time, so in this category, Andrew Tate is the clear winner. There is disagreement, though, between them, don't get me wrong, especially about the fetishization of weakness in women. I think the disagreement mostly comes from the fact that one of them is a woman and the other is a misogynist. So, Rupi's poem. She's not a porn category, or the type you look for on a Friday night. She is not needy or easy or weak. Daddy issues is not a punchline. Oops. Let's see what Tate says. There is nothing sexier than a needy girl. Wow. Unsurprisingly, daddy issues is a frequently recurring theme in these poets' bodies of work.
To fathers with daughters, every time you tell your daughter that you yell at her out of love, you teach her to confuse anger with kindness, which seems like a good idea.
Yeah.
Until she grows up to trust men who hurt her because they look so much like you.
Hey.
Go queen. You tell 'em.
Thanks, Dad.
While Rupi Kaur laments her daddy issues, Andrew Tate is completely unaware of his. This segment is going to be more focused on Tate because if you read the tweets he writes about his dad, it actually makes a lot of sense why he turned out the way he is. He frequently tweets about what clearly is abuse from his father and then romanticizes his abusive behavior. Like this anecdote where he tells us that his dad repeatedly pushed him as a toddler. When I was a toddler, my dad bumped me at random, pushed me over, non-stop. Eventually, I learned to pack pedal extremely proficiently. So he pushed harder. When I was older, he did it to Tristan too. I remember watching. Why pushes, Dad? So you learn to get up. Usually when I encounter this kind of ludicrous story on the internet, I automatically write it off as being made up for attention. But you know what? This time, I believe him. This probably happened. Taking into consideration everything we know about Andrew Tate, I would say yeah, it makes sense that he was pushed to the ground repeatedly as a toddler. And by the way, Andrew, pushing a toddler is a weird fucking thing to do. It's not good parenting, and you know that because if it was good parenting, you wouldn't have turned out a sex trafficker and a fucking loser. I added this part just because I find it interesting how the cultural glorification of violence get internalized and passed down. And these two are the perfect reflections of the values society indoctrinated men and women with. Rupi exists because Sad Girl Tumblr exists. And Andrew Tate just casually dishes out the most almost cliche, abusive father villain origin story without realizing that being afraid of your dad doesn't make you a man. It made you insecure and sad and misogynistic. That's it. Also, I wasn't actually keeping score of who won the poetry competition. I just wanted to show you how similar Kaur and Tate are, and also make fun of them. Yeah. Let us therefore bow our heads in reverence, for Rupi Kaur and Andrew Tate have graced us with what certainly are words. May their verses continue to illuminate the corridors of our collective human experience, and may their poetic influence ripple through the future of literary history. My channel is definitely too small for me to do a PSA, but I wanted to thank all of you for giving me way too many views on my first video. The reason it took me a whole month to upload my second video is because I was going to capitalize off of my college name for this video and make this into a college channel, because college channels tend to do well. But people in the comments of my last video seemed to want me to keep complaining about internet people, so I stopped working on my college elitism video halfway and made this instead. But I'll probably publish that video sooner or later because I already photoshopped school merch onto the Teletubby. But please give me more video ideas because these are my ideas right now, and frankly, they're not very good. So thank you again. I really didn't expect my stupid, unhinged rant to get any views at all. And if I make this a commentary channel, I will complain about more men in the future, so gender equality may be achieved. unless people don't like this video, in which case I will cry. So thanks for watching this video. I hope it's better than the last one. Probably not. I think it's better than the last one.